So how many of you have ever wanted to create something, or you see something on Pinterest or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and you're like, ooh, I want to make that? Any of you? Some of y'all? Yeah, maybe? Okay, so we do that a lot. We actually make our own crafts, so I'm going to be demonstrating and showing all the process of how we make our crafts today. So step one of this process is getting the idea. This is always the easiest part because we either get the idea sent to us or we just come across it on Pinterest and say, ooh, that looks like, you know, something that people would want to buy. That looks like something that could catch the eye and say, ooh, I need that in my house. So usually that's what happens. Part two of this step one is getting confirmation from my dad that he can make it. He can know what measurements need to be made and exactly what the cutting needs to be, how long it's going to take. If it takes too long, usually we're just like, move on to the next one. So step two is gathering the materials and measurements. This is kind of a long process. It's also a very patient process. This part, my stepdad cuts the wood, takes measurements, sands the wood, nails whichever needs to be nailed in, glues stuff together, so the wood sometimes needs to be nailed and glued together, etc. The part that me and my mom do that requires measurements and tools, we use something called a Cricut. So we'll use that, the vinyl that goes with it, the sticky board, transfer tape, and a weeder that can pick out the vinyl that we don't want, that we just want to use to outline that we can do. So this is usually the longest process up here, with waiting for the glue to get dry and waiting for everything to be cut out, because with this, you know, it has to be precise. You can't have uneven edges and something that's supposed to be this big and really it's this big, or you know, like we made welcome signs a couple years ago, and so if you have a door that's this high, you wouldn't want to make a sign this high. You would want to make something a little smaller. So how many of you guys know what a Cricut is? I just mentioned that. You do? Yeah. So a Cricut is a machine. It's kind of like a silhouette that we use to cut vinyl. So whenever we go to stick a part onto a piece of wood, I have an example of one that I made a couple months ago. So this isn't free-handed. This actually requires a cheat method. So with this silhouette, we applied a sticky, it's almost like tape, to this, and it sticks to the wood. And there's small parts where the lettering is that is left out. And so that's where we would take the tweezer, or the weeder, not a weed eater, but weeder, and we would weed out this part of the tape, sticky stuff, to be able to paint this on. And so the next step is the lettering. So same thing with the Cricut, the lettering, getting all this together, making sure that it's precise. This, does it look crooked? Does the lettering look crooked at all? No. So this part is kind of like in the measuring and stuff. We do have to measure the top of the G to the top of the wood and the top of the T to the top of the wood to make sure that this part of the phrase is centered, it's straight, it's perfect, because we don't want to give someone something that looks like crooked and they're like, give it, you know, because then that wouldn't be worth the customer's money, and that's just not how we roll. So with the Cricut, so this is actually a weeder. So this is kind of like the tweezers that weeds out stuff. So like on this is an example of just like a picture. So it's weeding out like the little spots in the house. So that's what we do with the lettering. So that's just weeding out the lettering and stuff. And so the Cricut is where we would use the like office stuff on our computer to type out the lettering, to get the measurements and how big, how wide, what font, and everything on the Cricut. And then, like I said, step it on there, good to go. So the last part is, like I said, sticking, but then there's also painting. So painting is very tricky because sometimes, you know, like Bob Ross paintings, he just dabs it in there and just well, this you've got to dab and then dab some off just so that it doesn't smear. So like on this, for instance, I think there's a spot, it used to be on the 2, and so there was like a little bit down here, and that's from where I just got too much paint and just kind of did it, and it just was just careless with it. So we use a brush about this big, and the bottom of it is circular, so we just, in circular motions, just kind of go around and trace, and then all the way through. And on the next slide, there is a video. So this was my like first piece I did, and then this one is a video, if you'll play it.
Yes.
Yeah, this is just the peeling off process. This is my first time, so I'm a little over-exaggerating.
Too bad.
So this is the adhesive that we were talking about.
Still not too bad.
So usually you can just rip this off. I was nervous that I was going to mess it up.
You can just rip it up. I don't want to mess it up.
Like just stated. And rip it off. So like this part in the E, we would usually take the tweezers and just pop that right out instead of trying to pick it with our nails.
Hey! It's the diesel.
See, you got a little bit.
Yeah. So usually we would take the tweezers and kind of pick little pieces off that we don't want to scratch up with our nails and mess up the paint and everything. Alright, so why we do it. We usually do this because it is the main reason that we fundraise for our mission trips. We also do it because we're kind of serving people in return. I mean, yes, they are paying for it, but we still enjoy doing it, and we love getting to serve people. So honestly, it's like a win-win situation. You know, they're winning because they're getting the product that they want. We're winning because we're serving them and going and getting to serve other people. And so a couple examples of other pieces that we've done. This was actually my first one that I was peeling off the stencil. So this is very complex because the arrows, I don't know if you guys can see, the arrows were like super hard to paint on because they're very thin, and when they're very thin, that's when you have to be extra light with the paint. These are actually the same thing. This is the front and this is the back. We use this in the winter, and then you could just flip it and use this in the fall. So we've had Georgia, Vanderbilt, MTSU, Alabama, you know, all those SEC teams, and then a couple more. So this one was Jesus is the key to heaven, but faith unlocks the door. This one was another cool one that we did. Super simple, literally whitewash paint, glue, nails, and then just a couple extra trinkets from Lowe's and stuff. This one was actually a request from someone. They had requested, hey, I saw this on Pinterest, just thought, you know, this would look good in my bedroom or in my house. So, you know, we talked to my dad about it, and he said, you know what, sounds good, it's simple enough. This one actually is super complex. So we had to take paint and paint the back of it first, and then go through and use the silhouette to stencil everything else on. So that took extra long because we had to wait for the first layer of paint to dry, and then had to go back, make sure everything was right with the Cricut, and then go back and re-stencil more on there. And then I think there's one more. Yeah, so this was actually our best seller. You can't really see it, but this was the American flag. So this one, I think, is the one that took the longest out of all of it. There's each individual slab of wood. So this one we didn't stain, this one we stained, and so on and so forth. And then we had this square that we stained, and then had to leave out the stars. So this one could take anywhere up to maybe like 5 hours to make, all in total of, you know, not including waiting and everything. So yeah, thank you guys.